Welcome to another episode of Financial Freedom with Tom Hegna, where I introduce to you some of the top financial professionals from around the country, and I'm talking Main Street, not Wall Street. I'm excited about our next guest, Shawna Moore. She wrote the book, Retire with More, the holistic approach for relaxed retirement. She's a financial professional from Glendale, Arizona. Welcome, Shauna, to the show.
Thank you, Tom. It's great to be here. I appreciate having me.
Now, I know a little bit about you, but the audience doesn't. So fill us in. How did you get to where you are today to be a financial professional in multiple states?
Well, first off, it was not my intention to get into the business, even though I basically have been around it my entire life. My parents actually got into the business before I was born. They started their own agency when I was 5. So it kind of makes sense that I would, but that was not my plan. However, during college, I was convinced to, hey, while you're going to college, work a part-time job, you can get your license, help us in the business. And to be honest, I fell in love with it, just with working with people, helping them with their retirement, avoiding making mistakes. And here we are today.
Now, did you learn some of your money skills from your family when you grew up?
I did. Growing up in the business, I think you kind of absorb that, or it's kind of in your blood, so to speak. I'm also a very big numbers person, although this business is not completely about numbers. It's about people and their lives. But that is something that I grew up learning.
So what's the most rewarding part of this job for you?
I think the rewarding part is really when I sit down with someone. You know, people are nervous when they get close to retirement. They're not sure if they have enough money. It's the biggest question. Do I have enough? Am I going to run out of money? What do I do with all of this? And so really the rewarding part is when we put together a strong, solid income plan that takes into account all the different factors, their income needs, factoring in taxes, helping them decide the optimal time to start taking Social Security, if there's legacy planning, and really putting that together. And you see the sigh of relief and the comfort that they have knowing, hey, I'm going to be okay. That's the most rewarding part of my job.
And I think when you do the holistic, when you're looking at everything, because when people just look at little sleeves, they can get nervous. But when you put the whole package together and you see how Social Security fits with a pension, fits with a portfolio, fits with other guaranteed income, it all makes sense. And that's why I think it can't be a do-it-yourself plan. You got to work with a financial professional.
Exactly, and I think one of the things people start doing these days, because there's so much information on the internet and misinformation, is they think they can do it themselves, but those people that call in are still very nervous about it because now they know that they're gonna have to look at the market every day if that's what they're doing. They may not know about annuities that can provide guaranteed income for life. So doing it yourself is not something that I would recommend just because you might be overlooking a lot of things. So it's kind of like, even though I'm a financial advisor, I think of myself more as a financial coach, kind of like you might hire a personal trainer at the gym. I mean, we all know how to eat right. We all know how to work out, right? But if you're trying to do something to get in shape for a certain event or just, stay in shape through life, you might hire a personal trainer to help make sure you don't have any missteps or overlook something that's critical in that journey. And so the same thing comes to planning for retirement. You don't want to wing it. You want to make sure that you're not missing anything.
Yeah, and I think people who do it themselves have too many blind spots. They haven't thought about what happens if they need long-term care. They haven't thought of what if inflation continues, or what if taxes double, or what if markets crash and stay down for 10 years. They haven't thought about that, but a good financial professional has planned that. So, look, a lot of these people coming to you for retirement, they got concerns. What are their main concerns, and then how do you help them?
Their main concerns are really just, they're looking at all these assets that they have saved. They're looking at what their income sources are, whether that's Social Security, maybe they have a pension, maybe they don't, maybe they have rental income. And it's all kind of a big, like, a junk pile, They don't know exactly what to do and which end is up. We've had a lot of clients that come in and they have their spreadsheets and they still don't know, am I going to make it? And we look at it and we say, this is pretty thorough, but you're not factoring in growth in the accounts, or you're not factoring in inflation or taxes. So there's a lot of things missing. So it's really just about, what do I do to secure my retirement and make sure, because people I think are starting to see that, hey, we're living longer. So your retirement, when I started in the business, it was a lot different. Retirement planning was way more simple than it is today, but people are living longer with advances in medicine. So we have to factor in that now you might not live, it might not be 10 or 15 years in retirement, it might be 20 or 30 or even 40 years in retirement. And then you couple that with the fact that now some people are retiring younger. They might be retiring in their late 50s or early 60s versus waiting longer. And so that's kind of what we're seeing.
So what misconceptions do you see when people think of retirement income planning? There's some misconceptions.
I think one of the main misconceptions is that the advisor that helped you get to where you're at in retirement is the same advisor that can help you through retirement. And not that those advisors you've worked with didn't do a very good job during your working years. They probably did an excellent job helping you grow your assets. But when you get close to and into retirement changes all the rules. There's a completely different way you have to look at things. It's not just the same where, hey, we'll grow and there might be some bad years where your accounts are down, the market's down. Now, if the market's down and you're taking money out in retirement, that's going to be a double effect. And so a lot of these advisors will just say, hey, take Social Security at full retirement age, and then from there, just take 4% out per year. It just doesn't work that way. And so really the misconception is working with the same advisor. So it'd be kind of like you at your age now. Are you going to go see your pediatrician? Or if you have a heart condition, are you going to go to see a cardiologist? And so sometimes, even though you have a good relationship with that advisor and they've gotten you to where you are today, if they're not looking at things like when is really the best time to take Social Security, analyzing your pension options, looking at taxes, legacy planning, Medicare, all those different things, you might want to find an advisor who actually specializes in retirement income planning.
So like, who's your ideal client? If you could say, this person would be my ideal client, what would they look like?
Well, first, I'd like to say that I do think it's super important that you find someone that you have a good rapport with, that you feel comfortable with, that you can see yourself working with for hopefully the next 20 or 30, 40 years of retirement. But we work really well with a lot of professionals, such as those in the medical field, doctors, nurses. We have a lot of teachers, those that are in emergency services like police officers, firefighters, that have these big pensions, and they've been helping people, saving people's lives their entire working careers, but they don't necessarily have that much help as far as what to do with their retirement planning and with their pensions, with their 401ks they might have with their employers. And so we've worked very well with those. We also work well with business owners, and then being a female advisor, which is, we're kind of a minority in the business. It's always been that way since I've been, since the late 90s. I do resonate well with single women, widowed, married women, because there's a lot of great male advisors, obviously, but I think as a female, we have just a little bit different approach. There's a little bit more of an emotional side to it. And so we resonate just for the men and women that kind of want a different experience with their advisor. That's kind of who we work with.
So now, kind of walk through your approach with your clients, because you have a different way of dealing with clients.
Well, we kind of have a three-step approach. So there's never any pressure, never any rush on my end. And we've had people come in where they've talked about going to meet with another advisor, and they've been rushed to sign something on the first time saying, hey, you have to do this, and they feel pressured. I don't want that. So first, I just want to sit down with someone and get to know them. I just really want to listen and let them tell me their story, what they've done for work, what their plans are for retirement, what retirement looks like in their mind. And that's the first meeting. Obviously, we're going to gather some information. Then I go to work. So it's kind of like when you go to the doctor and then you say, hey, here's my problem. I don't want to just give a solution right away. I want to do my homework. So that's when I go on the back end and I put together a full income plan looking at their entire situation. Then we'll get back together. We'll go through that income plan together and my recommendations. So it's going to be at least 2, 3, maybe 4 meetings before we get to that point where we'd say, hey, do you want to implement this plan and move forward?
So you're really building a relationship with those clients.
Yes. So my clients, I know it might sound cliche, but they're really like family and friends to us. We try to do, we have an office in Arizona as well as Tennessee, so we try to do client appreciation events. We just did a spring training event in Arizona a couple months ago, and just invite our clients and say, hey, we appreciate you. It's not just about the business, it's really about you as a person.
So why are you seem very driven to serve your clients? Where's this drive coming from?
I think the drive really comes from just helping people. It's more, like my husband's in the business. He's taken a more active role. He's been a coach. And so it's really I like to educate and coach and help prevent people from making mistakes and working with an advisor that doesn't mean they're ill intent, but maybe they don't have the licenses to advise on an annuity. So then they just tell you everything should be in the stock market. Annuities are bad. Yet they look at your pension that's provided by your employer, which is most likely a group annuity with the same insurance companies you can get on the individual side. So that annuity is good, your pension. But if you take part of your portfolio and now you put it into an individual annuity with the same insurance companies, that's bad. And so really what I try to do is what I want to do is help as many people as I can to not make those mistakes and know that they have someone they can trust that's truly being a fiduciary looking out for their best interest.
Now, taxes are a huge issue in retirement. It's probably the number one thing people are going to spend money on in retirement. How important is tax planning in your retirement planning?
Tax planning is absolutely essential because we don't know what tax rates are going to be in the future. I mean, personally, I think tax rates are going to go up. I know they're talking about taking away taxes. Let's just say hypothetically, they stop taxing Social Security like it used to be, and they remove taxes currently. Does that mean that if you have 20, 30, or 40 years of retirement, that some other future administration isn't going to come back and add taxes back in? We don't have any control over that. So I think being as tax efficient as possible is super important. So when you have a pre-tax account like a 401k or another employer plan or even a traditional IRA, it's kind of like going into business with the government because they have a piece of that when you take it out, but you don't have any control over how much. It could be 20%, it could be 30%, it could be 40%. And so if you can start shifting some of that to tax-free accounts like Roth IRAs, if you use some cash value life insurance policies, those types of things can help you at least have some of your income in the future tax-free because we don't know what the tax rates are going to be, and unfortunately we have no control over that.
Now, technology is everywhere now, and it's having an impact in the financial services world too. So how are you using technology to help your clients?
Technology has actually been great. When it first came out, we started, because I come from the era where, even though I'm kind of younger, the old school is go into their house, sitting across the kitchen table. Right. And so I want that one-on-one connection with my clients, and it's a lot easier to explain things. So it took a little bit of adjustment to get used to doing Zoom or other types of ways that you can communicate, but I can share my screen with them. And so now if our clients, we've had clients that are local that then move, all of a sudden they move to Florida and I'm in Arizona, for example. Now I can still communicate with them, or they might be on vacation or I might be on vacation. I don't really take vacation because I try to be there for my clients, but now I can actually help more people, even people that are local in Arizona. Sometimes just because of traffic, they don't want to get out in the car and drive. And so we can still have that one-on-one communication and still have that personal relationship and get everything that needs to be done handled.
So look, you wrote this book, and you know, when I wrote my first book, there was something that really sparked me. So what was the spark that caused you to decide, hey, I'm going to write a book?
Well, I think the spark started when I hit about 25 years in the business. And I said, you know, I want to get the word out. I want to be able to educate as many people as I can. I want to prevent people from making those mistakes and just really try to do as much as I can to help, because I'm only one person. You know, I can't help everyone. But I thought, hey, writing a book, it's also helpful when I meet with someone. You're trying to get to know them, but I want them to know me as well. So it's more of kind of, hey, I'm getting to know you. In the meantime, while I go to work for you, here's something that can kind of talk about my philosophy, and that way they can really determine whether we're going to be a good fit. Because if they don't think that my philosophy is right for them, that's okay. I'm not going to fit every single person, but that way they get to know me, and that way we're going in the right direction from the get-go.
So what advice would you have for people when they're looking for a financial advisor? What should they be looking for?
Anyone that says that annuities are bad or that the stock market is bad, those all or nothings are a big red flag to me. So, I mean, some people may not want to invest that much in the market, or they may not be that aggressive. Some may not have that much in an annuity. But for them to come out and say one or the other is bad, you have to look at what their true intentions are. And what I've found that a lot of times when people come in and say, well, this advisor said all annuities are bad. Well, you look up the advisor and he's not licensed to offer annuities, or his company doesn't offer it. And usually it's both. So if you're not trained, licensed, and educated on annuities, how can you give an unbiased opinion or recommendation that annuities are bad if you don't know what they can do for your client? And the same on the flip side, if everything is all annuities, no investments in the stock market, well, maybe you're biased towards that because that's how you make your income. And so are you really giving the client unbiased, true advice, or are you giving them advice that what you can help them with? So really looking for someone, I don't recommend two advisors. Either look for two advisors or preferably find someone who does both that can really give you that unbiased advice.
Yeah, when an advisor only has a hammer, everything looks like a nail. You know, I just did a blog post where I talked about golf and investing, because I'm a golfer. And in golf, you have 14 clubs in the bag. You have a putter, you have a wedges, you have a driver, you have 3-wood, you have 7-iron. And you don't use a driver out of the sand trap, and you don't use a sand wedge on the tee box normally, you know, and so every club has its role, and it's the same. there's a reason why there's mutual funds and ETFs. There's a reason why there's annuities and life insurance and long-term care insurance. They each are a club in the bag to be used at the right time. And some, half the advisors leave half the clubs out of the bag. It's crazy. And so what you're saying, I think, is find an advisor that has all the clubs in their bag and is willing to be unbiased and do what's in your best interest.
Exactly, 100%.
Now, Shauna, you talk a lot about Social Security, and some people want to take it at age 62. For some people, their full retirement age is 66. For some people, it's 67. The most you can delay is to age 70. What's your normal recommendation for somebody when they say, what age should I draw my Social Security benefit?
Well, Tom, that's one of the number one questions we get is when should we take Social Security? And I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for anyone. What we look at is we actually do a Social Security maximization report, but we tie that in to their overall retirement income plan. So if they're retiring earlier, we want to look at, does it make sense to take retirement to wait to take Social Security until 67 or 70? Does it make more sense to take it earlier so they're not spending down their retirement assets? What are their goals? Do they have children and grandchildren they want to leave assets to? And we want to look at not just what's that monthly amount, but what's the lifetime expected amount. Now, there's no crystal ball. We don't have any idea how long someone's going to live, but we can make an educated estimate based on their health, their family longevity, and see what is that break-even point. Because if you start taking payments at 62 versus 70, that's 8 extra years of payments. So that's 8 years of drawing down on your retirement accounts. So we want to look at what's that right balance, and that's how we help them find out this is the optimal time to take it. And from there, it's really up to the client as well what they feel more comfortable with.
Yeah, because there's so many different variables. The health of the person, the health of their spouse, and sometimes even if, let's say, the husband's sick, they might say, well, I should take my Social Security early, but if he was the breadwinner, it might not be good to take it early because his check will be her survivor benefit. So if she's healthy, maybe he ought to delay. If there's minor children in the house, you have to start your benefits to get those benefits. So that'd be another reason why somebody might want to start early. But I say in general, the breadwinner should delay. So whoever made the most, since that check covers both lives in general, they should delay. Now, one of the biggest risks in retirement is needing long-term care. And so many people, it's the blind spot. If they're the do-it-yourselfers, they haven't come up with a plan. So how do you help people manage that risk a really real risk of them needing long-term care in the future?
Well, we talk about that with every single client. And even for those that say they don't want it, I at least want to have that conversation because I tell them, look, I'd rather discuss that now when you're as young and healthy as you're ever going to be, because we're only going to get older and hopefully not get unhealthy, but that's the likelihood, right? So we look at that and look at the different options. So sometimes if someone does have a need for the right type of annuity for them for guaranteed income, it might have some sort of income doubler where now maybe their income doubles for up to 5 years and at least maybe they have some sort of coverage. We also utilize a lot of specific types of life insurance now that they didn't used to have available in the past, where now it's really designed for that long-term care benefit. So for those people that are afraid saying, hey, what if I don't need it and I spend all this money and I don't need long-term care? Well, now because you're using life insurance, if you don't end up using it, there's a tax-free death benefit that goes back to your estate, to your to your surviving spouse or to your kids, so that if you didn't use it, you don't lose that money. But if you do need it, now it's kind of like self-insuring a certain portion. Maybe you put $100,000 in, but you get $250,000 of benefits. So now instead of having $100,000 set aside in your savings account for long-term care, you technically could still cash this out because it's cash value life insurance. But if you need it, now you have 2.5 times that amount of coverage.
Yeah, there's so many new coverages out there. There's even an annuity now that has guaranteed issue long-term care features. So there's so many new products. And you mentioned life insurance, and life insurance can play a role in a number of ways in retirement. So share with me some of the ways you're using life insurance.
Well, we use life insurance, for our younger clients mostly because it makes more sense, where they can now, instead of maybe they max out their Roth IRA, because we do talk a lot about Roth IRAs so that it's tax-free in retirement. But life insurance can be utilized again where you purchase the least amount of life and death benefit, and you can maximize how much you put into it. Because with life insurance, if it's done correctly, you can take withdrawals in retirement that are tax-free. So without having the restrictions that the government has as how much you can put into your 401k at work or your Roth IRA and so forth, now you have another plan that is going to do a couple of things. First, it's self-completing, so if you haven't funded it all the way, there's a death benefit that comes back to your family. And secondly, now you have cash that builds up. If you end up in a position where you need cash, you can borrow it earlier, but the idea would be let it continue to grow until you're 60, 65, 70, and now you have an additional tax-free income source that you can draw from if needed, and if not, eventually then there's that tax-free death benefit.
Yeah, I just think it's so important to have multiple streams of tax-free income in retirement. That's how I've tried to position my retirement. And what I think some people forget about is that all the interest from tax-free bonds counts towards the taxation of their Social Security benefits. When I was in Arizona 30 years ago, that's kind of how I got in the business. I was helping people reduce or eliminate the taxes on their Social Security benefits. And I'd go out to some house and they'd have tax-free bonds and CDs, and they were paying tax on 85% of their Social Security benefits. And when I walked out of there, they were paying zero tax on their Social Security benefits just by moving some of the money out of CDs, out of tax-free bonds, either into annuities or life insurance where it wasn't reported that way. And so I think there's so many ways that people can reduce or eliminate taxes on Social Security and other places if they have a good financial advisor giving them good advice.
Exactly, and it really is about having different buckets of money. So if you're all in the stock market, you might have different stocks and ETFs and mutual funds and bonds even, and they're still all in the stock market. So even though they're all a little bit different, that's to me one bucket of money. Now if you have gold and silver, some people like, that's another bucket. If you have cash CDs, that's another bucket. Insurance, that's another bucket. If you have real estate, that's another bucket. So you have truly different buckets. And so really it's about diversifying properly within your risk tolerance and your goals and objectives, of course, but really having multiple different sources of income and how your assets can grow and so forth.
And have them be non-correlated, because if you
Correct.
remember back in the great financial crisis, stocks went down, bonds went down, gold went down, oil went down, Bitcoin went down, it all went down.
Exactly.
Life insurance and annuities didn't, so those
Right.
were non-correlated assets. And there are some other real estate went down a little, but it didn't go down as much. So you just don't want to have all your assets going down at the same time.
Absolutely.
So Shauna, you've got like a pretty big operation here. You're in multiple states. So how does that work? How do you go from state to state, and you do a lot of virtual work as well?
We do a lot of virtual. So we have our main offices are in Arizona, outside Phoenix, and outside Nashville in Tennessee. So those are the main office that we're physically at, but we do help people virtually by Zoom calls and so forth. And so I do a little bit of back and forth. We're basically going to be kind of snowbirds in Arizona in the future, and in Tennessee more full-time, but we'll be back and forth 100% between those two states. And but beyond that, I'm licensed in almost 10 states, I think, just because I've had clients in different places. I grew up in Washington State, and now I'm in Arizona. So over time, I've just accumulated clients in different states, all down the West Coast, pretty much the Southern, and just, as we build and we have referrals and things, people come from different states. And so to me, I just want to be able to help as many as we can. And because we have technology today, we're able to do so.
So Shauna, you got a podcast going. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, yes, we have a weekly podcast, and my husband and I do that together. And it's just really, we want to be able to try to talk about current relative topics. Obviously, some things are continuously something that we need to get that message out, but sometimes there's current things happening, like when we've talked about tariffs and the market, when the market's been very volatile. So we just want to give some comfort to our clients and to our listeners, and just to provide some additional education through that podcast. And hopefully in the future we'll have some guests on there, or be able to have some live questions from people. But what we try to do with that is take some things that are questions we actually get from clients and put that into that, so that not only are we educating the client who asked that question, but we're saying, hey, this was a good question that the client had. I'm sure there's lots of other people that have the same question, just like with some of the changes with Social Security, where they're now going back, and those that have pensions now qualify for Social Security because they made some changes. So we're just trying to get information out there that maybe people are not aware of.
They got rid of that windfall elimination provision, and They also need to know about IRMA. A lot of people don't know about IRMA, that if you make too much in retirement, that your Medicare premiums can go way up higher. And if some people convert to Roth, if they convert too much, that bumps them up in the bracket, and then their Medicare goes way up. And so that's why, again, I think you got to work with a financial professional, because do-it-yourselfers don't see these blind spots.
Right, and again, that goes back to that holistic advisor, because we do specialize in tax planning, and so that even though I'm not a CPA, just by disclaimer, but we know a lot about taxes and making sure that we're not inadvertently putting our clients in a bad position. And a lot of advisors just don't specialize in that. They don't have the education or the tools for that, and so they're overlooking a lot of these important factors that can really have a huge effect on your retirement planning.
Now, if somebody wants to get in touch with you, how do they find you?
Well, they can go to our website. So our website is morewealthmanagement.net, that's MOORE. They can call us toll free at 833-4-MY-WEALTH. And on our website, they can also go to on our website is our radio page, which has our podcast. We do have a podcast. It's More Wealth Retirement Talk, and you can find that on Spotify, Amazon, or Apple Podcasts. And then they can reach out to us if they would like to sit down. We offer 15-minute complimentary consultation just to have a brief discussion to see, hey, are we a good fit? What's your situation? Can we help you? And does it make sense for us to schedule a more in-depth conversation?
And if they want to get a copy of your book, how do they find that?
Well, they can find that on Amazon as well. They can also call us. We'll mail out a few to people that if they give us a call, but you can go onto Amazon and order it.
Well, thank you so much, Shauna, for joining me today. And thank you to all of you for watching another episode of Financial Freedom with Tom Hegna.